Hello everyone, this is Chris Jamel at Exiton Interactive, and by the time that we are done with this video, we will be able to, if the user sends in a login request to the server, we'll have the server obviously give us the response. Once the timer is done, we will be able to redirect. In the case of logging in, we're just redirecting to the home page. Let's go back. If I go to register, I send in a request to register. Actually, I'm not going to go through all of it because I've updated so the send button doesn't show until this is valid. But this will send us to a page saying, check your email for your register email. And the same thing for login. So if you forgot your username, you give us an email address, send it in. We'll redirect to a forgot your username. So check your email for that one. Got your password, same deal, maybe. Sends the response back, sends us to the forgot password page, right? So that's what we'll take care of in this video. As usual, you can find a link to the article for this video in the description below. Let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is to enable SSL in our project. Do that by right-clicking on the web UI and choosing the properties. I've already done it here, but this will open up here, and on the left-hand side here, if we click the debug tab, you'll see there's a little checkbox down here that you can check mark to say enable SSL. When you check mark it, it'll assign a port to use. It doesn't matter what it is, but it'll just pick a random available port. We'll close that. So now what we need to do is to define what we mean by a canonical URL. So we're specifying what URL we want a particular resource to use, so a page or a controller action. This is what we want. If something accesses that page or controller action, this is the URL that we want them to use to access it. So we're going to do this first by creating a new extension class. So I'm going to go to our extensions folder, right click, choose add, new class, and go up here and choose or call it HTTP context extensions. .cs HTTP context extensions. I'm going to make sure I spelled it right. And of course, we need to make this a static class. And all right, so we're going to create a method. So it helps if you type it right. Public static. We're going to return a tuple. So with an element, first element being a bool, second a string. Canonical URL. This HTTP context. We're also going to pass in the localhost SSL port. Okay, so now we have to define sort of the rules that we have. Let's start. We'll just say host is equal to context.request.host.host. And for our port, the port is going to be equal to, so if the host is equal to localhost, then the port that we're going to use is going to be the one we passed in, the localhost SSL port. Otherwise, we'll say context.request.host.port. If that has a value, we'll use it. Otherwise, we'll assign it 0. Next, we'll say port string. And that's just going to be equal to, so if the port that we have now is either equal to 80 or port is equal to 443, then we'll just say that the port string is string.empty. Otherwise, we'll just use the string interpolation so we can add in our colon, and then we'll put the port. really that's only to handle localhost. I don't anticipate using it because of how we're going to use it to deal with any other port numbers. But so next we'll say we have port string, we'll make port path base, and context.request.pathBase.has value. So if it has value, then we'll use the context.pathBase.value. Otherwise, string.empty. Perfect. Okay, so now var is canonical. We'll just use this variable to decide whether or not it is a canonical URL. So request.isHTTPS. So we'll start off with requiring all of our requests to be HTTPS. Next, path is equal to pathBase plus context.request.path.value. And var path lower is equal path.toLower. So if path lower, we need to handle the home screen. So if it's not equal to just the / and path lower dot ends with / then is canonical, we'll say is false, and we'll say path lower is equal to path lower dot trim end, and the end we want to trim off the /. So we don't want to have the trailing slashes on our URLs. From now, we basically need to recreate the URL. So we'll put query context.request.query string as value. So if there is a query string, then we'll do the same interpolation that we did with the port, except of course we add in our question mark. And so that's context request.query string.value. Otherwise, familiar friend string.empty. Next, we'll specify, that's actually right, the format for our URL. Format is equal to HTTPS : / and we need the host. We need the path, or the port, the path, and the query string. So we'll return, and we'll return is canonical, and we'll return string.format. Format that we'll use is the HTTPS format. Pass in the host, port string, path lower, and query. Save that. So now we're ready to use it, and the way that we're going to use it is by adding in a piece of middleware. And because I really don't have extra things to add and don't have a better place to put it, what we're going to do is create a new folder. So we'll add new folder. I'm going to call it infrastructure, just because it sounds cool, I guess. And we're going to create a new class inside that folder. Creatively, we're going to name that Canonical URL Middleware. Get rid of all these namespaces. Oops, no, just get rid of them. Get rid of them. Do stuff. Speaking of which, I didn't mention it. Of course, it's in the article, but we're using the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.HTTP namespace in the extension method. We'll come into our middleware here. We're going to need a private read-only int, and that will be the localhost SSL port. So we're going to pass that in, and we need to read-only request delegate, and that's the next. So that's using the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.HTTP namespace. We need our constructor. Just do it. Okay. What we'll have is we'll have the request delegate passed in and our localhost port. So next is equal to next, and localhost is equal to localhost. Perfect. Now we do the invoke method. So public async task. Of course, we in system.threading.tasks, and like I said, invoke. What we'll have is the HTTP context that comes in. And from there, var is canonical and var URL is equal to context dot canonical URL. Pass in the localhost port number. So if is canonical is false, then what we want to do is to say context.response.redirect and URL, and we'll make it permanent. So permanent redirection 301, and then we'll just say await underscore next and context. Save that. So now we have middleware that we're able to use. We'll go into the startup.cs class file. And I guess to know what we're doing here, if we go in here, we have this properties area or option, I guess a folder. Inside that is a launch settings JSON. If we open that up and we look in here, when we check mark to allow SSL, it automatically added a SSL port and an entry for the port number. So that's where we're going to get the port number to pass into our middleware. So back to the startup.cs file. And the first thing that we're going to do is a little bit of a couple of things to, so when the framework creates a URL, so we're going to configure services, services.addRouting. We want to add a couple of options here. We'll say options.lowercase URLs. We want them to be lowercase, and append trailing slash. We do not want a trailing slash. That takes care of that. So if we go down here now to the configure method, what we'll do is we'll say localhost SSL port. We'll start off with it being 0. So if it's in development, we'll come in here and we'll say that the localhost SSL port number is going to be new, and we're going to create a configuration builder. We're going to set the base path, and that's going to be equal to directory, and that'll bring in system.io get current directory. So that's the base path. Add JSON file. That JSON file again is located in properties / launch settings.json. And next we call the build. After that we'll say get section, and it's inside of a section called IIS settings. Get section IIS express. So if we look at the launch setting JSON, the section IIS settings, then there's an IIS express, and inside there is a port. So next we'll just say get value, and I want the generic one. Tell it that it's an int and it's SSL port. So now we have the localhost SSL port. I'm going to add the middleware after the using static files. I don't want to mess with redirecting on static files. So what we'll do is just say app.use middleware, generic version, canonical URL, middleware, and we'll pass in the localhost SSL port. Finally, we're able to save that. And what's the best way to test this? Well, first off, if we just go to home page, or helps. Let's just start this again. So we'll see we're going to localhost and not SSL, so not HTTPS. So we've redirected to an HTTPS, has the right port number. Let's go to /account register, still works. Put our trailing slash on, it's removed. We can see the 301. Guess I could have made it capital as well at the same time. We'll just do it separate. And capital worked, so we have an error. That's not good. So we go back to the extensions, path lower ends with, oops, because I skipped one, right? In our definite requirement here, where did I miss it? Yeah, I did miss it here. So I meant to put, so when we find path and path lower, we'll say is canonical, and that equals to is canonical. I don't want to change, I want to keep it to be false if it's already false. So is canonical, and we need path equals path lower. Try this again, rebuild, back to the browser, refresh. So we're on capital register at the moment. And it got redirected 301 to lowercase register. It's doing its thing. So let's go back. All right, so now the next thing that we want to do is to have the ability to send in, send a URL to our authenticator. So for instance, if a user is registering, if they register successfully, what we want to do is send back to the authenticator a URL to have it redirect to that page. The usual, thank you for registering, check your email for the registration email, blah, 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 blah stuff. So what we're going to do is close this stuff down. And to create the URL to redirect to, we're going to create another page. So I'm going to come into the account folder inside of our pages folder, and I'm going to add new item. We want a razor page. Again, when I first create this page, I'm going to create it all camel case. So register email sent is what I'm going to call it. We'll choose add. I don't even care what's going on inside of here, but we'll just let it fix that. Actually, I do care. Let me just copy in what I've already made. Like I said, we're just setting the title, confirmation. We'll come back probably and change some of this stuff, but it's just the usual, check your email, blah, blah, blah. Nothing special there. But I do want, like I said, to have nice URLs. So now that it's created, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to put hyphens in it. So it's going to be register email sent. I forgot that and previously and put the dashes in when I created it. It had the underscores in here. When I went back to change it back, Visual Studio decided to lock up on me. So try not to make that mistake again. We'll go back to the code behind file. Clean up the namespaces here. So what we want to do is, actually no, that's not the one I want yet. Clean the namespaces anyway. What I want to be is in register, so the code behind for register. So we have on post. Right now all we're doing is returning the request. We're going to change this. We're going to return a new anonymous object. It's going to have a URL in it, and we're going to say url.page. And the page is /account /register email sent. That's right there, page handler. That's the objects, route values, and the reason I'm adding all that is because I want to specify the protocol to be HTTPS. In the end here, we're going to make this easier to use. Well, for now, we'll just save that. And I think that we're at the point here that we can go back to console here. I don't like stuff like that, so let me go ahead and rebuild Come back in, refresh. Twiddle our thumbs while we wait for it to come back up. And everything is good to go. We're just going to send, go to the network. We should get the 200. And now we have the response from the register giving us the URL for the email sent page. So now we need to use that. To do that, we're back to Visual Studio. Let's go ahead and close that for now. Solution Explorer. We're going to go into the source, component, authenticator. First thing I'm going to do is modify the sendscreen.component.ts file. We're going to change the way we're handling calls to the failure and success methods. First step is to create an interface. I call this animate timer. And then inside of that, I have an on hidden optional method. Takes in 0 parameters, returns void. On timer expired. Again, optional. No parameters, void. Then I'll define another one, interface success or failure. Extends the animate timer. Inside of here, we need to have a message, required message, and an optional URL. All right, so now I guess the best place to do this, let's go down and change the animate timer function. So animate timer, or method, I guess. Animate timer now will take in animate timer, and that's actually going to be a animate timer. I don't know why I made it optional, but we will continue with it being optional. Did it for a reason. So we'll come down here into the onFinish method. We're going to keep that stroke change there. We'll say if low dash is nil, animate timer. And if that's equal to false, so it's not null or undefined, we'll say if low dash is nil, animate timer dot on timer expired. If that's equal to false, we'll say animate timer dot on timer expired. Just call it. Same thing for if low dash is nil, animate timer dot on hidden equals false. And so animate timer dot on hidden. Just call it there. Otherwise, I guess that's, we'll say else. I'm going to move this up into here. Remove the on hide. Perfect. I don't know why IntelliSense over here is not telling me, or nothing. Things aren't telling me there's any errors, but we should see we have errors going on in our browser. So now that we've fixed that, I'm going to create a helper method while I'm at it. We've already done something previously with the animations in the authenticator.component.ts file. Probably should go back and figure out a place that I can put this function that can be used everywhere, but I don't want to deal with it, so we're just going to create a private method. I'm going to call it compose. So compose is going to take in a function. I specified it as void. It could be any, and it could take in arguments. Don't really care. Actually, I care about the arguments. Don't care what it returns. So we'll take in an F1, and we'll take in an optional F2. Same deal. 0 arguments, void. And what we're going to do is just return a new function. And then that function is going to call f1, and we're going to say if lodash is nil f2. If that's equal to false, then we'll call f2 as well. All right, so now I guess we're up to fixing stuff. So the first stop is failure. So instead of taking in a message, now this, I'll just call it failure, and it's going to be success or failure. So we need to pass in failure.message now. And then inside the onFinish, what we're going to do is take out, well, we have two semicolons there. Inside onFinish, there's the onAnimate timer. That has a function inside of it. We're going to take that out, create our object, and we're going to say onHidden. So once it's hidden, this dot compose what we were already doing previously, so changing some styles, removing the classes, but we also want to allow to specify something else to happen. So we'll say failure dot onHidden. So then compose those two functions together. And I think here is where I need to, am I outside there? Hard to keep track of where I'm at sometimes. So yeah, right here. And so now we want the on timer expired. I don't have anything specific to do within the send screen, so all we're going to do is pass in the on timer expired method that was passed in. Okay, so that should take care of failure. And I guess we need to handle success now. Same deal. We'll just say success, and that's an success or failure. Success.message. Same thing down here inside of animate timer. Take that out. Make a thing. Make a object. Make sure I set them to the right thing here. So again, on hidden is where we compose this dot compose, and the function that we were just using. And we want to compose also success.onHidden. Outside of that, now on timer expired, we just pass in success.onTimer expired. Perfect. And I guess I did forget that I wanted to change this one. So instead of onFinish, I'm going to change this to be onHidden to make more sense. Stay with what I did previously. It was all lowercase. onHidden. So now onHidden is that. Quick check of the notes. Looks like we're good. If we save it, go back, we're going to have a ton of errors, but it's probably you can't see them very well, but all of the errors are within the authenticator.component.ts file. None of them are in the send screen. So that's good. So now it's time to fix the authenticator.component.ts file. First thing I'm going to do while I'm up at the top here is I'm going to import, and we're going to import from Angular/HTTP. We need the response object there, and figure out where I'm at again. So let's go to forgot password first, I guess, in the alphabet. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this in real quick. For all these successes, we're going to create this method here real quick, or soon. We're just going to create a method called redirect on success. While I have that copied, I'm just going to put that in all of the success areas. We should have one more. Perfect. Now we come back up here. Just because I don't want to type them. It's probably faster. So forgot password. Now for the error message, we have to create an object to put the message in. Same deal. Forgot username. Come down. Can't do it with the provided username or password. Change it to message, put in an object, and last but not least, change the register. And above register, we're going to create our method. So private redirect success. Method is going to take in a response, which is of type response. And oops, forgot to update my notes, but we just are using the same message. Now I've erased that message. Well, that's unfortunate. Give me 1 second here. See if I can go back in time. Actually, I guess I know I can go back in time. So if we look somewhere in here, hopefully. Nope, save that. And authenticator, what was our message? What we're doing is going to call that. At least I can move it over and type it. Come on. Move it over here and we'll actually type it in. And now we can go back. All right. Like 50 million things to do just to get this to work. So const JSON is equal to response.json. And this dot send screen dot success message that I was using before is request successful. You will be redirected shortly. Perfect. Now URL is json.url. And save it. And apparently, response. Response. We have to add that in to all of those. Then we'll be good to go, I think. All right, save that. Back to the browser. Everything is saved, up to date. So register is giving us a URL. So if we hit send, hopefully, cross our fingers, we get nothing to happen. Crossing our fingers did not help us. So what I'm doing, so if I look at register, we get success. Let's make sure we have the actual URL again. So it gave us a URL. Register success. We're going down to the redirect on success method. URL is getting passed in. URL, JSON URL, going to the send screen. Go down and take a look at success. We have coming in. Okay. Did I just muck that all up? Right? Success. So what I'm trying to contemplate now is why my notes are saying, oh, I forgot to do something. Idiot. All right, so in the success, all I'm doing right now is saying, hey, if you pass me in something, I'll do it. But what I want to do is to compose on timer expired. So we'll say this compose, and we'll compose. So this is our function that has to be there, and then the one that can be there is the success.onTimerExpired. Okay, so now within the one that has to be there, what we want to say is that if lodash is nil and success.url, if that's equal to false, then what we'll do is we'll say window.location.href is equal to success.url. Save that. Now I'll go back, send, and it's actually doing the redirection. I guess it won't redirect unless you tell it to. And so that takes care of that part. We'll go back into Visual Studio here. We're going to close those down, at least for now. Like I said, I want to go back in and make it easier. Let me close these. So again, if we go back to the pages, go to the account and register, I want to make this process of generating a URL for a page easier. So I'm going to go into the extensions folder and I'm going to create, so add new class. We're going to call this one URL helper extensions.cs. Remove the namespaces, static, and I called it public, static, string, HTTPS string, or HTTPS page. So that's going to take in an IURL. Yes, I know, things are messed up. IURL helper. So that's the Microsoft.ASP.NETCore.MVC namespace URL. Wait for a resharper to slow my process down. All right, and then we'll take string page name, string page handler, default to null, and objects, so route values also default to null. Just slightly not enough. Whatever. So which time we're going to return URL.page and page name, page handler, values, and HTTPS, the protocol. Save that. Back to register page. Now we can say URL HTTPS page using that extension, and all we have to do is pass in the page name. Helps if you don't add in a whole new thing. So we're just passing in, like I said, the page name or path. And while we're at it, we are going to go into the login page. So the code behind for login, and modify the successful areas. So on success, so if the person is able to log in, what we want to do is to send in a new object, again the URL. Maybe we should create a way to simply do this. Probably we'll do it a few times after this. Might think about doing that. But so we're going to pass in, for now, just the index. Go back to the home page of the app. On forgot password, instead of doing this, we're going to just pass in account / forgot dash password. We already created those pages previously. Same deal for the forgot username. go ahead and rebuild. Back to our browser. Let's go and check out login, account login. All right, so we're on the login. If we successfully, since there's checks going on for login, we have to successfully do it. Pending login success. And redirect it to the home page. That works. Let's do forgot username. I don't think I'm doing any checks there. So we're forgot username, and just to be thorough, like forgot password. Perfect. All right. So now let's do a little bit of cleaning up or slight modifications. And we'll go back to the authenticator component. First one we're going to do is the styling. So authenticator.component.scss. Remove the overflow, the comments from overflow hidden. Close that. We'll go into the template, authenticator.component.pug. And for password, we're at password. Instead of being text, they should be password inputs. Go ahead and close that. I want to change, let's go in here and look at register. It's easy on the email. So if I have A at A and I come in here, A at B, and I come back here and go, oh, it should have been B, and then I go back, I would like it to update to automatically be good to go. So we'll change that. Also, if I started off with A at A, I made it over here, A at B, I go back and I go, oh, it should have been AA or something, or it's correct. When I go back, we're going to head and remove, we're going to empty this box. So let's go back in here. And what we're going to go to first is the forms folder, forms, and then the form.controller.ts. We have a way to reset the whole form. I want to create a way to reset a particular control. So reset control. We're going to pass in the name, which is a string. So from there, we'll just say const control is equal to this dot get control, pass in the name. Once that's done, we say control dot reset, and this defaults, and we'll pass in the default value for it. Save that. Next, we'll go into the authenticator.component.ts file. First thing we're going to do is button disabled somewhere in here, and we're going to remove the comments. Next thing we'll do is go to the next control method somewhere. It's alphabetical and still it doesn't help me. All right, so we're in the next control. We're coming down here to the control password key. So we're going to go to is register, so meaning we're on the control password. If it's valid, we're going to go to the confirm, and that's where we want to make our changes. So all we're going to do in here is to say if, and this dot control password confirm dot value. If that's equal to this dot control password dot value, then we'll say if this control password confirm dot invalid. So if it's currently invalid, then we'll just say this control password confirm dot update value and validity. We'll do our only self is true. So that will update it if I've gone back and changed the password to be the confirm, or the confirm password. So that was if they were equal in value. Else, all we want to do is to say this form controller dot reset control, and pass in this .control password confirm key. Come down here to email. Do essentially the same thing with it. So email. I'm not doing it now. We're going to have to do it at some point in time. We're still under the assumption that the only time we need email is if we're registering, but we need it for, the forgot password and forgot username. So we'll have to update it eventually. But for now, we're just using this as if email was only used for registering. So we'll say if this .control email confirm .value is equal to this .control email .value. So they're equal, and if this .control email confirm .invalid, we need to update it. Control email confirm .update only self true. So that takes care of if they were the same. If they're not, form control .reset control this .control email confirm key, and save that back to our browser. Easy to check on the email. So A at A, we put A at B. It's not the same, or AB. Go back and put a B on the end. It's updating to be correct. Let's go back, put another B on the end, come back, and it's now empty. So that's working the way we want it to. And another thing we're going to need to change, I didn't think about, if we hit reset, we need it to go back to the first controls. We'll do that later if I remember. Otherwise, I'm sure you can take care of that. But I think that will take care of it for this video. Main thing, of course, was the fact that we changed it so that if you send in a request, and let's go to login because it's easier. If you send in a valid request, well, we haven't really done what's valid yet, but if you send in a request, the server, and it's successful, then the server will return a URL to redirect to, and the authenticator is automatically redirecting us to it. So that'll take care of it, I think, for this video. Next video, we should be working on the identity stuff that I talked about in the previous video. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.